Many banks don't trust young people to give them money. They prefer to invest more in businesses that are already there and are already established.
At the core of this vision and those partnership is entrepreneurship. And young women entrepreneurship is central to that vision.
So the only thing you need to do is to have a viable proposal. Remember, you must convince us the business idea.
Welcome to State of Africa. I'm Jeff Morte with the Africa Leadership and Dialogue Institute. Now, did you know that across Africa, businesses led by young women have the potential to generate over $280 billion in revenue over the next 5 years? Yet, as highlighted in the Young Women in Africa as Agents of Economic Growth and Transformation report by the Mastercard Foundation, significant barriers remain. In Kenya, a major challenge is limited access to affordable finance. Today's episode spotlights powerful conversations from the Young Africa Works Dialogue on Dignified Opportunities, held in Nairobi, Kenya. But the conversation didn't begin in the capital. It traveled across Kajiado, Nairobi, and Mombasa, where young women entrepreneurs shared not only the real challenges they face on the ground, but also the opportunities they are seizing to grow, innovate, and lead.
My business name is Feed Organics, whereby we recycle organic waste, and this includes the vegetables and fruit waste from the local markets into animal feed, specifically for poultry farmers in Kilifi County. Since my business is like a social enterprise, so it addresses both an impact and also the whole economical side. So for the impacts, we are addressing the environmental issue of organic waste ending up into landfills. So we're trying to divert that and creating it into something that is valuable. Commercial banks need to reduce the paperwork, because I don't think it's really necessary if I'm taking a loan, like for instance, just 10K, for me to go through all that process, right? And also the second thing I'll say is the requirements that they need, or rather the documents that they need for businesses to provide for them to even be able to obtain that loan. So if they're able to cut down all those processes, I think it will be an easy process.
My name is Benta Musoka. I have a ladies' clothes boutique. It deals in ladies' wear, dresses, and official wear also. And we are based in Kitengela. One of the challenges is acquiring capital for your business. Many banks don't trust young people to give them money and to start up businesses. They prefer to invest more in businesses that are already there and are already established, something that can give them their money back and their profit back. People don't really believe you can start something and keep it going. For me, commercial banks, they tend to deal with older businesses, not startups. Like, you have to have guarantors and all. And I find the commercial banks a bit uptight because they tend to ask a lot of things and they don't really communicate your language.
My name is Gloria Kisilu. I am the founder of the Shaba. What we do is we work with rural artisans, majority being women, to handmake beautiful handcrafted sisal bags that celebrate heritage, craftsmanship, and also unique design. A lot of the women actually make handcrafted sisal bags but never really getting the benefit of their craft. And we wanted to come in and ensure that they have fair wages. The entire process from the harvesting and planting of the sisal to the finished product is a transparent supply chain. And that's ideally the problem that we wanted to solve. The biggest challenge in running Shaba has been access to financing, because majority of the time we have been bootstrapping, and somewhere along the line we were looking for capital investment to buy more machineries and also to increase the number of artisans that we have.
My name is Magdalene Muthe. I am the founder and CEO Mosoro Afya Flowers. At Mosoro, we offer nutrition solutions using natural food formulations. We are able to do this using porridge flours, breakfast cereals, and edible oils. The gap that we're filling as Mosoro in the economy is availability of nutrient-dense foods. We find a lot of products in the market are single ingredient foods that do not have all the nutrition composition that are needed to offer a full meal. So at Mosoro, we package, we bring together different foods to make a complete formulation to support specific dietary needs. There is a challenge in the market where the financial institutions do not fund the vision or the business plan. So as a business, we constantly have to go to these financial institutions and see how much are they willing to offer and dumb down our plan to be able to make use of these finances. So most often we get less than we need to be able to fund our business plans, and making it take a lot more time to achieve our business goals. I would like for commercial banks to make the loan application process more transparent so that we can already know how much money we are able to access from the banks, because I think that there are so many businesses that do not take loans because they don't think that they are loanable. So once the information is for me as a banker, I'm able to view this information, I can be able to take advantage of these opportunities.
Now, by the time the dialogue convened in Nairobi, the priorities were unmistakable. In the room were government officials, financial institutions, and young entrepreneurs coming together not just to identify barriers, but to co-create practical, lasting solutions. The convening opened with Hannah Sadiq, country director at the MasterCard Foundation, who articulated a bold vision, unlocking access to finance for young women across Kenya.
We are here because we have a fundamental challenge and a profound opportunity that we can together unlock. This is about unlocking the potential of young women entrepreneurs as a pathway to dignified and fulfilling work here in Kenya. And you will hear much about this word, dignified and fulfilling work. Those of you who work the foundation, you know we talk about this a lot. At the foundation, we define this based on what young people themselves have told us across Africa. Why do we believe that young women-led entrepreneurship is that pathway to dignified work? It's because this is where the future of work already lives, in the hustle, in the ambition, and in the ingenuity of young Kenyan entrepreneurs. When you go around the exhibition, you will see that ingenuity, you will see that creativity. Nearly 90% of the 800,000 young people entering the workforce every year find work in MSMEs, 90%. When you look at these enterprises, you may think that they're small, but when you combine them all together, they actually contribute 35% to Kenya's GDP. That's formidable. So our MSMEs are actually the economic engine and the employment engine of Kenya. And guess who owns those MSMEs? You may be surprised. 2024 statistics show us that there are more youth-led business owners under 35 than non-youth, people like me, yeah? So young entrepreneurs are actually the majority, not the minority. And I think that's a mindset shift. This is not a marginal issue, it's central to anything that we want to do when it comes to entrepreneurship. And young women, they are not on the sidelines of this entrepreneurial action. According to the latest FinAccess data, around 1 million young women in Kenya are currently running businesses. 1 million young women. And they're on par with their male peers. Only 26% of young women-led businesses access formal finance. So are we to believe that the remaining 74% are not commercially viable? Could that really be the case? So this dialogue is about questioning those assumptions. And imagining what is possible when you see things from the point of view of potential as opposed to from the point of view of risk. So how do we unlock this future together, this inclusive economy of Kenya? This is one of the questions that we at MasterCard Foundation, we are up at night thinking about this, and I know many of you in the room as well. We have committed through our Young Africa Works strategy to enable 7 million young Kenyans to access dignified and fulfilling work by 2030, and the majority of that being young women. At the core of this vision and those partnerships is entrepreneurship, and young women entrepreneurship is central to that vision. We've already made some progress. We've supported over 650,000 MSMEs through partnerships with KCB Foundation, with Equity Bank and Equity Group Foundation, with Genue Growth Program. Many of you are in the room here today. That's no small feat, 650,000 MSMEs. And through those collective efforts, we've managed to support over 2.2 million young people to be in work. It's progress, but it's not enough. Progress, but not enough. I think that's going to be one of the things we will keep on coming back to. We see that Kenya has come a long way when it comes to financial inclusion, but we can do more. And we're looking forward to having it all come together in this big potluck. We have created an inclusive table, which means that every single voice matters. All of you are experts in your own right, so make your voices heard, make your solutions known. So, as I close, I have an invitation, and the invitation is simple. It's to listen. It's to listen to one another. This space is about, yes, what's already in existence, but what else should we do? What is disruptive? What is innovative? Bring that. And then commit. Please reflect on what you can do as an individual and as an institution to solve this question. And especially you young people, we are also looking to you to commit. It's not just high people up there. You also can commit to doing things differently. We want to hear your commitment as well.
This was no ordinary dialogue. It was one that would focus on the real challenges and also shed light on the possible solutions ahead. At the center sat a trio of insight and influence. Dr. James Mwangi, CEO, Equity Holdings Group, bringing measured perspective and financial foresight. Susan Mangeni, Principal Secretary, State Department, MSME Development, a guiding voice for enterprise and inclusion. And Mastercard Foundation Country Director for Kenya, Hannah Sadiq, carrying a clear and compelling vision to expand access for young women. Let's listen in.
We'd like to get 15 minutes of questions. Shoot your hand up.
My question is, having connected with the young women, I have seen that they truly have the potential to build businesses that can scale and grow. So what can they do to earn the trust of financial institutions that they can be able to access more capital in a sustainable way?
I think they earned the trust through this partnership. We have brought in two powerful brands, the government, the regulators, to say, provide a solution. So walk in once we have signed, and it's granted. Remember, we have also said we'll provide you with a guarantee. We'll not ask you for security. So the only thing you need to do is to have a viable proposal. Remember, you must convince us the business idea, and it must show viability. It will be added advantage if you are scaling, you have proof of concept. We said we are scaling what we proved during COVID. If there is a proof of concept, that is instant.
How do we solve for how quickly we need to start repaying the loan? I'm talking as a farmer. By the time I'm coming for a loan as a farmer, it means I will be harvesting in 3 months. So if the bank is expecting me to start paying off this month, so let's say I get the loan on the 1st of the month, and then on the 30th, the bank is expecting me to start paying off that loan. Where is this money supposed to be coming from? So I think that's also something that we could look at in terms of inclusion, because there are a lot of us young women who are doing small-scale farming, who would like to grow to large-scale farming, but we know that farming takes time. Yes.
The biggest problem is assuming there is one fit-all loan for everybody. You should have a loan designed for your purpose. And that's why I said there must be a business plan. We are funding a business plan. The best example for farmers, I would say, is we have done 24 irrigation schemes with the German government. Irrigation schemes are 12-year projects, but they are tailored towards the cycle of cash flow. Security never pays loans. It's cash flow that pays loans. So good banks, and Equity is a good one, we tag repayment to cash flow. When will you get the money? If you look at tea farmers, we tag their repayment to the tea bonus, not even to the monthly proceeds. So loans are structured to a project or to the purpose for which the loan is being borrowed.
Just to say, I think we're really hearing across all the conversations, really young people saying we need that tailored product for us, yeah? And I think the one thing, and we'll hear more about that, is around understanding that young women entrepreneurs are not a homogenous group. So how can the financial sector providers get even more innovative in terms of tailoring to the different segments that we see there? And one thing that I really disrupted my own thinking was around the affordability. I thought it was all about affordability in terms of the interest rates. Interestingly enough, so many young women like you, Olive, are saying it's actually the flexibility on the loan terms that will make all the difference.
And know what you want. When you go to a bank is not doing you a favor. A bank is in business. You are helping the bank by buying from it. Say what you want, not the bank to give you what they want. You go and say, I want a loan to build a house. It will take me 2 years to build the construction, so I don't want to have any repayment for the first 2 years. And we call it grace period. We even have a name for that period.
I'm the refugee here in Kenya. Jana tulizungumzia, kuna swali ambao mwenzangu refugee aliraise kuhusu refugee kuchukua loan. Because kuna some limited zenye zimewekwa kwa ma refugees kuchukua loan. Alijibiwa eti refugees sana sana wapay loans because ni watu wenye hawakai sana hapa. Tuseme in a simple terms ni wapitaji. Sasa mimi nikauliza jana but sikupata jibu. Nikauliza huyo alikuwa your same colleague from Equity. Nikauliza umesema kuwa refugees sana sana wapewe loans na big challenges ni hiyo kwa sababu wakai sana hapa Kenya. But unakuja kuangalia for sometimes kuna refugees wenye wamekaa hapa hata wamekaa sana hapa, kuna wenye wamefanya hata miaka 20. Yeah, kuna wenye kuna miaka 12, miaka 20. Yaani wameshakaa hapa na hawana tena matumaini yoyote ya kurudi, tuseme kurudi kwao, ama matumaini yote ya kuenda mahali. Hata hiyo matumaini ya resettlement wameshaipoteza. Yeah. Vipi sasa kuhusu hao ma refugees wenye wamekaa sana hapa?
Equity Bank has a branch in every refugee camp, and it's banking refugees. The government of Kenya has been very kind and generous and has changed regulation to allow us to bank refugees. We have, in these branches, lending is as usual. It's like Kenya. Now, IFC, the World Bank group, came in and said, we can guarantee these loans to the tune of $20 million as long as you can give $100 million. So you can see that is approximately 14 billion shillings in equity waiting. MasterCard Foundation came and said, we can train the refugees.
I think maybe just in addition to what Dr. is saying, so we have a form of identification. Even if they're in the camp, there's a way through which they're identified, and we are including them in our programs. Currently, the program which you have rolled out, the National Youth Opportunities Towards Advancement, we have also a segment on refugees. So part of the beneficiaries also are going to be refugees. I know when we sat there, you were asking me whether if you're not a Kenyan citizen, you can also get to benefit from the opportunities we have through e-citizen, and I told you, provided you have some form of identification, and like he has said, we have opened up even in the banking sector. We are doing, if you are existing within the Kenyan space, you should be able to benefit just like everyone else is benefiting.
One of the key things that I think we haven't really brought into the discussion is insurance. What is the role of insurance in really enabling these young women to really grow their businesses, but also to enable them to navigate and become more holistic in terms of sustainable growth?
Insurance has 3 roles. The first one and most critical one is to protect their health. Because what really, all of us are just one health incident away to bankruptcy. Because if you got cancer today and you are to be thrown to India, you know what it means. Very few families or individuals can survive that. So it kills everything. So health is number one. The second one is the assets you acquire. They need to be protected because of incidences like fire. We hear of Gikoba. How can you get back if there have been 5 fires in Gikoba in 3 years? Every time you restock, a fire comes. We must protect our stock. We must protect our properties. Otherwise, you go back to square zero. You were here, as an incident comes, you disappear again. So property is very important. The last one is life. You are young, you have 2 children. You are the sole dependent. Anything happens to you and we lose you, what happens to the children? We need to have a life cover that can take the children maybe for 10 years. Equity, we have learned a lot from our 23 million customers and realized we now have a health insurance. And it's not just health insurance, we also have the supply side, the Equity Afya medical centers. Then we have life, and then we have property and fire.
So maybe just to add on that, we are also promoting access to universal health care. You see, we introduced recently SHA Pole Pole, Lipa SHA Pole Pole, because the kind of people that we are dealing with, like I said, in kind of a lottery. So if you are an entrepreneur, you must also work out your risk, because like we say, as much as default is an outcome, but also your business is prone to shocks. So how do you go about those shocks? How do you make sure you don't fall down to the base? So it's a safety net.
My question is on access to finances through the legal documentation. Yes, I understand that Equity Foundation and other bankers, they normally offer services to refugees, particularly if you want to open an account through the document known as the manifest. But when you want to access loans from those institutions, some of them say they need an alien ID, which is a refugee ID, and of which most young women and the youth within Kakuma refugee camp don't have it. Even if they are to go and apply for it, it may take longer for them to at least have that ID. So will there be a way whereby you can use the manifest itself that they have opened with an account with it to give the loans through the details of that manifest?
Let's spend time developing the products which are specific. In Equity, we use focus group discussions. We go to the customers and say, how would you want it? That's how we develop the product. So we can develop a specific product. And a branch manager has the capacity to tweak a product to fit. In terms of access, which was asked we are trying to convert agents to originate loans so that people don't have to come to the bank. But more importantly is what I was talking of, a platform. Can we do a platform so that, I think we have all learned from M-Pesa. Why don't we develop loans for businesses using platforms such that people don't have to move. So that's how we are doing it.
In terms of young women business owners being part of conversations like this, right? How can they be part and still be mothers and do this? I really want to shout out something that has happened here, which is in the space, when you go out to the left, there's actually a space, a daycare for the young mothers who are here today. There's a space for young women who are breastfeeding to actually do that here. And the more we can do that we actually think about even these dialogue spaces become conducive for young mothers to participate, I think that would be fantastic. I myself was a young mother. I had my son when I was just around 22 years old, and there are many opportunities that I couldn't go to and participate because I had to make sure that I took care of back home. So the more we can think of inclusive practices, even for these kinds of conversations, the better. So we will continue. It's the first one for the MasterCard Foundation, and we will continue on this front. Yeah.
I think what you have asked has been the state. I've been in Kakuma 3 times now with the commissioner for UNHCR from to solve that problem. The government has been very gracious and has agreed. Now you can own a bank account as a refugee. You can have a mobile number, things you could not do before. Now, what we said is that recently, as late as we were there in February, we managed to get the World Bank to guarantee up to $20 million for us to release $100 million to refugees. So now you can borrow, you don't need the alien card. It's the normal documents. And it's not just for loans for business. The government has also come in and converted Kakuma into a municipality for refugees. And now you can even build a house. Leave alone, because they recognize this has become a permanent home. So you try now, the product is there. But it's a lot of change globally that has gone to recognize refugees in the host countries.
We take a short break now. When we return, we shift our focus to solutions from both the entrepreneurs and the partners walking this journey with them. This is State of Africa. See you after the break. Welcome back. You're watching State of Africa. As we continue sharing insights from the Young Africa Works dialogue on dignified opportunities, the business case for investing in entrepreneurs is clear. Across Africa, 90% of young people access work through small and medium-sized enterprises. For young women, entrepreneurship remains the fastest pathway to dignified and fulfilling work. So, what would it take for financial institutions to engage more decisively with this powerful segment? Wakioro Njogona, Managing Partner, Hiva Fund, weighs in.
What's interesting is when you look at any business, viability is key.
Yeah.
With Hiva Fund, you're very deep in creative entrepreneurship, cultural entrepreneurs as well. As a fund, as a financial institution, as a partner, how do you view viability in these particular spaces that are a bit uncharted? The woman has gotten the courage and she's walked into the Hiva Fund office.
Yeah.
How do you assess that viability?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the thing that I want to say first is that a creative business is just like any other business. It has to have it has to be, like you're saying, the word viable, it has to be viable. So someone has to think about it as a business. Can it generate income? Can it be able to give me the income I need to survive off of it and maybe potentially actually employ more people out of it? And so viability is, am I thinking about it as a business? What do I need to do to get there? Mm-hmm. Do I need to buy my own guitar, for example? Do I need to buy my own camera so that I can be able to take more pictures and then use them for, something? Mm-hmm. What does that look like? And so we want, when you come in most cases, someone will come in and say, I am really good at taking photographs. How do I turn this into a business? Mm-hmm. And in such cases, then we have a pathway where we're like, okay, we will connect you to these individuals who are able to help you start to think about it as a business. Mm-hmm. But you also find that there are people who have already looked at it as a business and they're actually generating some income out of it.
Final question in our conversation, because we're talking, the barriers here, but you're also looking at solutions.
Yeah.
From what you've seen so far in your business, conversations that you've had in room as well,
yeah.
What do you think has been the biggest systemic challenge, barrier, and what do you think is the potential solution from where you stand?
The biggest systemic barrier, I think it's perception, mm-hmm. On both sides. So I say perception because when a young woman walks into a bank or when a creative walks into a bank or a financial institution, there's already a perception. You look at the person and you're like, I don't know, just profiling them. But I think perception, it's something that we all need to actually work on, where we look at, people outside of what you see, but when you have a conversation with this person, do they understand? Majority of the time you'll find that actually they know that they're in business, but they just need a bit of an extra boost or extra support and a welcoming environment for them to be able to articulate themselves. And on the flip side, perception, when a young woman walks into a bank or even doesn't walk into a bank, there's a reason why they don't do that. It's mm-hmm. because they will view, I had someone talking about the language that's used or, mm-hmm. There are all these
other things that, influence how we make decisions as human beings. And so when we start to unravel that and actually understand, okay, so what is the best way I can communicate to this person that they can come here and they can ask for a loan? And maybe I might say no, but it doesn't mean that I do not believe in their business, that I'm also willing to offer additional support. I think the perception thing is actually something that's a real barrier to how we perceive access to finance. Then you realize, the reason why a financial institution like a bank would not actually look at a certain demographic is because there are some punitive measures that will be taken against them. And so they cannot, even if they wanted, be able to take on such certain things. But I think the more we have these conversations with everybody in the room, then the more we realize that we're actually all working towards the same goal. And so it's important to have these discussions. I like that there was, the young women were there saying what they want to see and how we can support them. The government was there, the financial institutions were there, the regulators were there. So everybody is having this dialogue, and we're all able to chime in to the solution. Yeah.
A recurring theme during the dialogue was commitment. What concrete actions would stakeholders take once the conversations ended, especially to make the entrepreneurial ecosystem more enabling? We posed that question to Mendy Njonjo, CEO of the KCB Foundation.
So this one is really easy because it actually rides on a commitment that has been made by the KCB group, specifically KCB in Kenya, which is number one. Here's a number, 250 billion dedicated for women enterprises, right? Women, young women are part of this group, right? So, and this is over a period of 5 years. So it's not necessarily something that is going to be stretched. So over a period of 5 years. So there's that very, very crystal clear commitment. Number two, in terms of financial products, it's also financial products that speak towards the issues that people were talking about. So unsecured funding, up till 10 million. Again, based on your cash flows. There's also for chamas, you can borrow up till 10 times your savings. So this is around 25 million that you can actually borrow, again, unsecured. So that's another commitment that has been made by the bank to women-owned enterprises. There are also other products like financial insurance services, like the Simba insurance product, which is, again, for enterprises that have or at least 3 employees, a tailored financial product that will speak towards your very specific needs and was developed to really cater for these young as well as smaller nascent enterprises that are developing. And then I think as KCB Foundation, a very clear commitment towards this partnership that we have with the MasterCard Foundation, as well as also with KCB Bank in Kenya. It's making sure that we continue to support young people in terms of enterprise development, so non-financial support, BDS support, boot camps, entrepreneurship support, so that they're able to access this funding from KCB Bank.
One thing we've realized, there is the lack of capital, but also close behind that is a perception issue, a mindset issue in terms of how this particular demographic is viewed. How are we trying to change that? Because it's also important as the young woman entrepreneur walks into the door, and we've heard of numerous cases that they walked in, they asked, there's one entrepreneur I heard who went into a bank and was asking for a PDQ machine for her business, and the bank said they ran out of them.
Yes.
It was laughable.
Yes.
So how do we start changing this mindset so that as they walk in, they are seeing opportunity. They are seeing a viable business before the discussion and not risk and a chance to dismiss.
I really like the framing that you've put in that question. And I think it all starts from a recognition that, let me say women entrepreneurs just generally, or young women entrepreneurs, young people, that this is not a problem we're trying to resolve. This is an asset that if you're smart, and I'd like to think that KCB is one of the smartest people out there, we see this as the opportunity that it is. And some of the things that you're talking about really speak towards how do we make sure that financial services are really appropriate for the demographic that we are trying to tap into in terms of business opportunities. Some of the things that are abundantly clear is that if you want to make a shift towards this sort of serving this population, you have to be very intentional. These things don't happen by chance. So one of the things that, if I may speak about some of the things that KCB, the bank, has also done to try and make sure that this population is also served, is you have to ring fence resources. So under the female-led and mid enterprises, KCB Bank, KCB Kenya that is, it ring-fenced 250 billion Kenya shillings that is dedicated specifically for women-led and mid-enterprises. In addition to that, some of the challenges that the women entrepreneurs were talking about, which is, hey, listen, I have customers, right? I have the ability to be able to, number one, make the repayments to the bank as well as grow my business, but it may not necessarily be in forms that you recognize. So it's moving away from also things like collateral-based lending towards looking at your cash flows and then seeing how much can you be able to repay. So under our female-led and mid-enterprises in KCB Bank, we also have a program or a way of lending where you can borrow up till 10 million Kenya shillings in unsecured funding based on your cash flows. And the other thing that is also, I think, speaking towards some of the things that the female entrepreneurs are talking about is that if you open up a bank account and you bank for a period of time, typically let's say around 6 months, right? In addition to KCB being able to see this is how your cash is moving through your bank, and therefore through the business, so that I can lend you money, it also sets up this visible way where your financing is now visible in the formal financial institution. So it's really one of those things where through this particular kind of product and through this particular kind of service that is aimed at women, you also find true financial inclusion happening. So you're moving from informality and invisibility from the formal financial institutions towards visibility, and with visibility comes funding.
Let's talk about the barriers, because the young women are talking about the barriers they're facing in terms of accessing this capital. I want to jump to the other side of the fence, to those dispensing this capital. What's the barrier they're facing in terms of dispensing it to them from a policy angle? Is there regulation or policy that's making it a bit difficult for them to really engage with young women entrepreneurs, and how can we change that?
So one of the things that I think is very clear is that as a regulated entity, and also just because of the kind of institutions that banks are or are meant to be, you have to be very careful about depositors as well as shareholder capital. So there's a certain stewardship and fiduciary responsibility you have towards the deposits that you have. You have to lend them with care. You have to make sure that you're not doing reckless spending. So I think that is, or reckless loaning in terms of the people that you lend this funding to. So I think that would be perhaps the one thing that perhaps mitigates against some of the barriers that you're talking about from a policy perspective. In terms of now that, I think there are two things that I was also hearing from the people on the floor. One is around perceived risk. Young women were saying, well, am I really that risky, right? If you look at the way I've been running my business, can we start, I think, even as financial institutions? The other thing that I was also hearing is there's perceived risk, and then there's the true riskiness of the women-owned businesses, right? So perhaps something on that front that may be sociocultural norms that makes people perceive young women's businesses to be inherently more risky. And then there's the true risk in terms of what is the true risk of young women-owned businesses. Unfortunately, in Kenya, and this is not something that is around just businesses that are owned by young people, it's businesses, especially in the micro and small space. After 2 years, they kind of tend to, about over 80% will typically just cease to exist, right? So there's also some work around that in terms of the resilience of businesses that has to be done in terms of supporting those businesses so that they're more resilient and they're more able to stand the test of time, so that borrowers, financiers can also lend funding to them. Something interesting that I think I'd also like to remark on is when it comes to products around specific groups of people, let's say refugee entrepreneurs, there are certain policy regulations in terms of know your customer obligations. So we need to know who we are lending to, just based again on good financial practice. I'd also like to remark that even when it comes to these sorts of policy changes, there are also products that even within KCB, again KCB Kenya, that we're also being able to provide to refugee-owned enterprises, as well as young women's owned enterprises, as I mentioned before.
For solutions to be sustainable and impactful, co-creation is essential. That was part of our conversation with Elizabeth Gathai, Regional Head for Africa at Women's World Banking. Let's listen in.
When you look at the data, when you look at the reports, not only in Kenya, but especially on the African continent, the business case there seems so ripe for the plucking, for financial institutions to get into this space. You're looking at, I'm citing one report from the MasterCard Foundation speaking at the fact that from now to 2030, if we included young women entrepreneurs, we're looking at generating revenue of, I think, over 280 billion.
Yes.
And that's a mind-boggling number. And for those who are not in the financial space, you'd ask yourself, then why isn't everybody trying to get into this particular space? If it's so ripe, what's their barrier to entry as well? Probably you could start from there. Why aren't these institutions and stakeholders really engaging with this particular clientele?
Jeff, the reality is, if we do not engage in this very, very important and significant demographic, Africa is going nowhere. The data shows that over 70% of Africa are below the age of 35. And the youth form the biggest portion of that. And when you look at most institutions, and we do not really understand this demographic. One, it is, they do not have what banks look for, or financial services look for. The credit histories, the banking histories. Once when you talk about a youth in Africa, aged between 18 to 35, how many have a bank account? There has not been a handshake between financial institutions and the youth. The mindset of the youth when it comes to engaging with financial services and the way the banks also view the youth, I think there's a big gap there. But much more importantly, look at the young women themselves. The care burden. You are a young mother, you're starting a family, you're taking care of your young children, you're taking care of your parents. How do you balance all this? So that is one of the things that those are some of the things that we really need to unpack for us to really get the real challenge, because we first of all have to start by defining the challenge so that we can have the right and appropriate solution.
What I want us to do is conclude this conversation with what you feel would be a successful outcome of the convening we're having. Because like you said, if we just come and talk and bring, empty rhetoric without action, then we'll be back here maybe next year doing the same talking. So for you, as we leave here, what would be a successful outcome for the two-day dialogue we're having to make sure action is actually taken, commitments are followed through, and we change and include this particular demographic?
Jeff, what doesn't get measured never gets done. One of the things we should get out of here, beyond responsibility, is what I would say the KPI, key performance indicators. And every institution or every stakeholder or every ecosystem player must have their responsibility and an indicator of what that success will look like. If it's the government, for instance, central bank, is it about changing a certain policy? Is it about ensuring that this agenda is part of the national financial inclusion strategy? If it's a financial institution, a bank, for instance, will they start tracking how many youth or young women are in their ecosystem? Will they start demonstrating that since we had the dialogue, this number of young women have accessed finance, have opened bank accounts, can access insurance? If it is the young women, are their businesses growing? Before we came, where were you? Or before the intervention, where was your business? Do we need a secretariat? Do we need a committee that will provide the oversight to ensure that all these initiatives, because what misses a lot is a follow-through. Who is the chief whip? Who ensures that we remain accountable? We are taking action and we remain accountable. So to me, that is what success would look like.
The needed interventions were clear, and perhaps no one put it more powerfully than Stephanie Kanyingi of Groots Kenya, who emphasized the importance of not just designing solutions for young women entrepreneurs, but ensuring that they are part of the process from beginning to end. Here's my conversation with her.
when you listen to your members, the ladies who you're working with in terms of creating these particular programs and participating, as you said, from the grassroots to the boardroom where this is done, what are they saying is their big challenge, and how would they want that intervention to look like? Because you're saying the interventions are made in the boardroom and brought to ground. What are they saying? How do they want them to look like?
They want them to look like flexible funding, flexible repayment rates, flexible, it needs to reflect the situation on the ground, right? The products that we are developing have to reflect whatever is going on the ground. Access to finance is not an issue that stands by itself. It's affected by so many others. We have culture, we have religion that would prevent a young Muslim woman from taking a loan with interest. So how are we responding to that? How many banks have, Sharia compliant loan products? We are talking about young women in business. Do we recognize that of the population of young women, very few of them already have the ability to start a business? So that we are talking about accessing finance for them. What happens to these other young women? I feel that while we've made some headway, we've only made headway for the urban youth, the urban learned youth on top of that. And even then, there are still so many other barriers for this urban learned youth to be able to access finance.
There's something interesting you said, Stephanie, and I think I remember at a certain breakfast where the conversation was around how certain young women entrepreneurs had walked into banks and different financial institutions and what happened once there. And you students spoke about the fact that the very fact that they've gotten the chance to walk into a bank is a privilege.
Yes.
Let's co-create that solution, because the financial institution is there and saying, okay, fine, but we're trying as much as possible to go to that last mile. We're bringing agency banking. We're trying to open branches, far and wide. Let's, hypothetically co-create the solution.
Yeah.
What would that look like so that this particular privilege is extended to that young woman in the rural area? What does that look like?
So it would look like working together, like even the banks, the financial service providers having some sort of social responsibility. And when I say social responsibility, I mean, how do you build this young woman up to be able to access that finance? We've talked about the barriers, right? We have the individual barriers that this young woman may have, maybe poverty, their family situation, whatever they are going through. We have the cultural, the societal barriers where there's a culture. We have religion. So we have to start in the community. Make sure she feels like she has the capacity, confident enough to take up, a loan, and that looks like mentorship. And it's not mentorship only on financial literacy. It's on life skills. It's on collectively organizing them and, putting them with peers and also other seasoned women entrepreneurs who have been entrepreneurs for a long time, so that, there are so many things, there are so many challenges that these young women will face, and even just having that listening ear does a lot, to ensure that they don't give up, they don't lose hope. So we have to surround this young woman with an ecosystem that is there to support her to get and knock, to have the privilege of knocking in a bank and saying, can I get a loan? So we mentor them. You collectively organize them where they're with their peers and other seasoned, grassroots women. So they walk the journey with them.
Okay. I want to conclude this with your one action point, the one thing you want to see out of the dialogues that we're having for the 2 days that we're here. Because a lot will be said, a lot of commitments will be made. You've been here, you've heard what has been spoken even before we formally convened. What's the one thing in a nutshell, as we bring this to a close, that you wish would be the action point out of this convening?
I don't know if I'll be, shooting for the clouds here.
We had better.
But I do want to see the financial service providers taking up that social responsibility and not waiting for the young woman to be prepared to access the loan, because as I said, it is a privilege for that young woman to be able to get in that bank and request for a loan. But can we meet them where they are? That young woman in Lamu who already is having a hard time convincing her parents or her community why she should start a business. Can we meet her there and try and address whatever all the barriers that she's facing? We need to have a holistic solution, so that it's whatever we are coming up with is not just for the urban youth, it's not just for the young man, it's for young women, whatever situation that they may be in. And we can't do that if the CSOs are working on their own and the government is doing their own thing, and we have to sit down together, which is why this convening is so good.
In plenary, participants mapped out what a successful roadmap should look like, highlighting concrete actions and commitments from both young women entrepreneurs and financial institutions. Together, they envisioned a stronger, more inclusive ecosystem for businesses and long-term impact.
For young women, entrepreneurship is the fastest pathway to dignified and fulfilling work. Their businesses are not just a source of income, they are a vital engine of innovation and resilience in their community.
Financial stakeholders wenye ambao wako hapa leo, kwa heshima na taadhima na kwa unyenyekevu tunaomba mtupatie products zenye ambazo zitatusaidia sisi wafanyabiashara wadogo wadogo kule nyanjani ndo tuweze kukua.
We also want to work closely with you, or rather work with you to design these products that will work for us, or rather meet our needs.
Today we are following on what we were doing yesterday, which was around the commitments and trying to figure out which are the ones that actually can be actualized.
Something that I really picked up from yesterday's conversation and also interacting with other entrepreneurs is they need to understand your customers, not just for us business, but for the financial sector to understand us and our needs.
There needs to be more capacity buildings and training on entrepreneurs ili waweze kujua their rights.
With the project partners to come on board and help us in getting those licenses in our business.
So my commitment is to go and teach them about this financial institution, and also to teach them that we don't open a business up. We take a business as career and be serious in business.
Fit for purpose, mindset shifts, last mile inclusion. These are the pillars of transformation. And young women entrepreneurs, together with key stakeholders in the financial sector, are leading the way. That brings us to the end of this edition of State of Africa. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow Aladi on all our social media platforms. Until next time, I'm Jeff Morte. Goodbye.